how is Correa's what is the response to Correa from the other South American countries? How do they feel about him? Does he have support from the surrounding areas?
I think yes. I think Ecuador definitely forms part of this leftist network that includes Bolivia and Venezuela, certainly Cuba, and Brazil to a certain extent, Argentina. You will find variations. Not all of them ascribe to his populist approach to politics,
Mhm.
but I think also. Populism is a kind of a mixed bag in South America because some other countries in the region, like Brazil, are a little more cautious, and so they might be they might tend to be a little more alarmed by these fiery politicians like Chavez or Correa that really stir up the masses. And I think some of the other countries tend to be a little more cautious. But I think, yeah, generally speaking, perhaps they tend to support Ecuador, but I also think that they would not necessarily host Edward Snowden or Julian Assange.
Mhm.
And because precisely for these reasons that I'm saying, they tend to be a bit more cautious. I wrote an article, I think about a year or so ago, about some reports suggesting that Brazil might harbor Julian Assange. And there was actually some talk about that. President Lula praised WikiLeaks and thumbed his nose at the U.S. briefly. But I think, unlike Ecuador, some of these countries would be a lot more, I think, reticent to offend the United States. And I think, and I've also written a lot about this in terms of the WikiLeaks cables.
Mhm.
The public rhetoric is one thing, and you always hear these South American countries railing against the U.S. And expressing anti-imperialist sentiment. But if you look at the WikiLeaks cables, behind closed doors, a lot of these countries, they talk to the Americans in a lot more cautious terms, and also tend to negotiate or to betray the confidence of other leftist nations. And so what the United States is able to exploit these divisions in South America because publicly they're against the U.S., but behind closed doors they say disrespectful things about each other. They're trying to negotiate with the U.S. also behind closed doors. And so I think there's a lot more division amongst the left in South America than is commonly reported.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a lot easier to, I guess, support these things from afar and not face any of the consequences of harboring someone like Julian Assange or Edward Snowden. But when it comes to Julian Assange and Edward Snowden, one of the things that the press here in America constantly talks about when these people apply for asylum in Ecuador is Ecuador's history of freedom of press. You discussed that in your article. Can you go a little bit more into that?
Sure. Well, I think on a certain level, the fact that Edward Snowden might wind up in Ecuador is a little ironic, just as Julian Assange's situation with Ecuador is also ironic. I mean, both of these people are whistleblowers. They're trying to expose government secrets and give rise to more freedom of the press. But it's a little ironic that Snowden would wind up asking for diplomatic asylum from Ecuador because whatever his public policies, whatever his rhetoric and his policies against the U.S., Correa leaves something to be desired. And so I certainly applaud Correa for challenging the U.S. in the diplomatic, economic sphere, or what have you. But that doesn't change the fact that I think in many respects, Correa should give the international left pause. Ecuador just passed this communications law, for example, which is a very slippery slope, potentially leading to censorship. Under the law, Correa can appoint his own representative to supervise the media. And so anyone who is potentially lynching a public figure or publishing something that's a defamation of a public figure, then the government can impose stiff penalties against journalists.
Mm-hmm.
So that has a very chilling effect, and it's also very subjective. How do you define defamation? That's really subject to all kinds of abuse. So the committee to protect journalists and other organizations and Ecuadorian newspapers are very concerned about this. Now, I don't mean to defend the right-wing media in Ecuador or Venezuela or a lot of these countries. A lot of times they're scurrilous, too, and shameless. But that doesn't change the fact that Correa is trying to pull a fast one. He's doing his own power play. And I think the communications law raises a lot of concerns. So in that sense, Snowden's plea to get diplomatic asylum in Ecuador is a little bit ironic. And then there are some other ironies that I get to in the article.
I want to follow up actually on some of those with you.
Which
Nikolas, can you hear me?
Some other political concerns about Correa.
Nikolas, I want to follow up on some of those other concerns that you raised in the article, and I think it connects too with the position that Snowden's been put in, and the kind of broader questions around a story like this. The other things that you mentioned in the article, specifically with Correa, are the fact that he also domestically has some very questionable human rights tendencies with the indigenous population of Ecuador. And then you also noted that he's pushed for better relationships with countries like Belarus or Iran, which also have really, really poor human rights records. And then when you look at where Snowden has been, I mean, there is obviously a lot of irony in leaking and whistleblowing in the United States and then going to Hong Kong, Russia, and now Ecuador. Ecuador probably has the best record of those three, but certainly, has its own question marks around it. Russia has a terrible record in regards to these things, and China, of course, also is a difficult situation. So do you think that there's a way? What's the outlook, though, practically speaking, for someone like Edward Snowden, who's done what he's done, to not get kind of drawn into these broader questions of geopolitics and just kind of, crude national interest, essentially, that sort of take away from maybe some of the issues that he's trying to highlight through his whistleblowing?
Well, I think that's a very good question, but I don't know realistically what the solution might be. I think you would hope that he would pick a more idealistic destination, but I think what this situation highlights for me is that no country is problem free.
Right.
And I think realistically, Ecuador is probably better than Hong Kong or Russia.
Definitely.
But I think Correa leaves something to be desired. In addition to this controversial communications law, he's also been no friend to social movements in Ecuador who are fighting for their own rights over natural resources. And, for example, he sent in the police to repress indigenous peoples who are concerned about mining and oil exploration on their lands, and they wanted to preserve their water resources. And then, Correa sent in the police and called them infantile, and 2 people got killed and many wounded in the Ecuadorian Amazon.
Right.
And I picked up on this actually as early as 2007. I was in Quito doing some research for my book, and I went to the Indigenous Federation in Quito, and I just expected them to be very, very pro-Correa. But this was very soon just after his first election, and they were very, very skeptical. And I think that's not surprising given just how many times indigenous people have been betrayed by ostensibly leftist politicians in Ecuador, and they just turn around and basically betray them. And I think if anything, since I went to Quito, there's been even more friction between Correa and some popular forces. And then there's this further irony, as you noted, that Ecuador thumbs its nose at the U.S. I agree with a lot of the policies challenging the U.S., but I'm also critical of some of these South American countries that just go so far they want to challenge the U.S. that they go so far in the direction of embracing really backwards and reactionary countries.
Right.
And there's this very, very disturbing case of Ecuador establishing links with Belarus, which is talk about ideological throwback. You still have the KGB in
Yep.
Belarus. It's a very repressive place. And there was I think Correa was potentially exposed as hypocritical just last year because, just at the time that he was going to extend diplomatic protections to Assange, there was another high-profile case in Ecuador of a dissident from Belarus who was a former army captain from Belarus who exposed high-level corruption. And then actually he was doing some research on the internet, and then he discovered that, Ecuador actually has very lenient laws, and maybe I should pursue diplomatic asylum in Ecuador. So he went to Ecuador, and, to his credit, initially, this was back in 2010, Correa gave him diplomatic asylum. But then, going back to this questionable foreign policy, Correa, in an effort to counteract the U.S., established an alliance with Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus. And in 2012, Lukashenko touched down in Quito, and Correa and Lukashenko signed all of these bilateral deals, most disturbingly on military technology. And then shortly after Lukashenko left, the Ecuadorian police raided this dissident's house, Alexander Barankov, the dissident who had previously gotten refuge in Ecuador, and threw him in jail where he was promptly assaulted.
Right.
And he probably would have languished there had Time magazine not published a really withering article condemning Correa as a hypocrite for giving diplomatic asylum to Assange, who was anti-U.S., but then clamping down on some dissident in the effort of cozying up to Belarus, which
and a dissident who,
hypocritical.
incidentally, is not a global
and so
media
finally,
star.
After all of this, Correa relented, and so the Belarus dissident was released from jail. But it reveals, I think, a crass sort of foreign policy, which is a little bit cynical, so that it looks like Correa is just thumbing his nose. He's trying to get high-profile cases, but he's not politically consistent. He's not politically consistent on all cases of diplomatic asylum.
And I think that another very clear example of that, and I'm less clear on some of Correa's positioning, but in terms of the kind of his political kinship with Chavez and perhaps Ortega in Nicaragua, the reactions of Chavez and Ortega to the Arab Spring and the uprising against really brutal Middle East autocracies was also, incredibly cynical and just really, really politically crude. I have one final question for you, which is a little bit of an addendum, but I think it was highlighted when you were talking about the Ecuadorian indigenous population. And I'm wondering what, there's obviously, we've talked about things that are problematic with the kind of new Latin American left, and then some great things that have been associated with them as well. But what is the environmental record maybe we could leave it specifically to Correa. You already kind of alluded to some of it, but in general, do these governments have a better approach to the environment or global warming or the Amazon, or no?
I think it's been a pretty mixed bag, and I think you've exposed the potential Achilles heel of a lot of these leftist governments, and I think I think that a lot of these social forces, be it indigenous peoples or others, they propelled Correa, Lula, and Chavez to power initially because there was this reaction against the U.S. economic policies and military and diplomatic influence or otherwise. And so I think for a while there was, I think, an alliance between the social movements and a lot of these leftist leaders. However, I think over time, I think the gap between the promise of these leaders and the aspirations of the people is widening, as we see right now in Brazil with the recent protests. But also, as you mentioned, on environmental questions, and I think Ecuador has, I think, some problems with the environment precisely, and is trapped in this extractive economy. In other words, extracting its commodities to export to other countries, be it oil or other natural resources. And so I think Correa has not been able to extricate himself from this extractive trap, and that's really exposed, I think, a big gulf between the president and his former supporters, because he has had some innovative environmental proposals on the Amazon, but nevertheless, he hasn't been able to get out of this extractive trap, and as a result, there have been a number of confrontations in the Amazon over natural resources. And I think over time, the South American left is going to have to pay a lot more attention to the environment if it wants to avert a lot of these conflicts that we've seen in recent years.
Wow, fascinating. Nikolas Kozloff, thank you so much for your time, and I would recommend everybody, if you're interested in any of these issues related to Latin America, social movements, the environment, you should definitely read Nikolas's work for sure. Thanks again.
All right, thank you so much.